They smiled at the check-in counter like this was a maturity test, but the paper they slipped into my hand was a bus pass, not a boarding pass. My stepfather promised money would transfer, yet by day 6, my account was drained. By day 9, the eviction notice arrived. When they called from Dubai screaming about why the credit card was locked, I realized that bus pass was never a gift. It was their way of buying time to steal my life. My name is Paisley Lewis. I am 24 years old, and for the last 6 months, I have worked as a junior analyst at Ridgeway Risk and Compliance in downtown Denver. My job is essentially about spotting patterns that do not belong. I look for the jagged edges in financial data, the tiny discrepancies in corporate ledgers that suggest someone is lying, stealing, or cutting corners. I am good at it. I am precise. I am logical. And yet, standing under the vaulted white tent roof of Denver International Airport, surrounded by the smell of overpriced coffee and anxiety, I failed to see the most obvious fraud taking place right in front of my face. I was living at home, a temporary arrangement that was supposed to be the responsible choice. After graduation, the plan was simple: save money on rent, pay down the last of my student loans, and build a safety net before moving into a condo in the Highlands. That was the logic I used to justify sleeping in my childhood bedroom while my 19-year-old stepsister, Brielle, treated the entire house like her personal walk-in closet. It was supposed to be a smart financial move. Instead, it was the blind spot that ruined me. The airport was chaotic, a sea of travelers rushing toward security, but my family moved through the crowd with the entitled ease of people who never worried about missing a flight. My stepfather, Gavin, pushed the luggage cart stacked high with silver hard-shell suitcases. They shimmered under the artificial lights, looking more like bullion bars than travel gear. My mother, Lydia, walked beside him, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the terrazzo floor, a cashmere wrap draped over her shoulders despite the July heat. And then there was Brielle, glowing with the kind of excitement that only money can buy, clutching her passport and a brand-new designer tote bag that probably cost more than my car. I trailed behind them, dragging my sensible carry-on. I was excited too. I had used my vacation days for this. A family trip to Dubai. It was Gavin's idea. A celebration of a big commercial real estate deal he had supposedly closed earlier in the month. He had talked about it for weeks over dinner, describing the Burj Khalifa, the gold souks, and the desert safaris. I had hesitated at first, worried about taking time off so soon after starting at Ridgeway, but Lydia had insisted. She said it was important for us to bond. She said we needed this. We reached the check-in counter for the long-haul flight. The line for first class was short. Gavin steered the cart toward the agent, flashing a charming smile that did not quite reach his eyes. He handed over 3 passports. I stood there, holding mine, waiting for him to ask for it. He didn't. I stepped forward, extending my hand. "Here," I said, offering my blue booklet. "You forgot mine." Gavin turned to me, his expression shifting into a performance of confusion that was just a shade too slow to be genuine. He patted his jacket pockets. He looked at the agent, then back at me. "Oh, right. Paisley, the travel agent said there was some issue with the booking code for your seat." The air around me seemed to thin. "What issue?" I asked. "You sent me the itinerary confirmation last week." "I did," Gavin said, his voice smooth, devoid of any real stress. "But when I called to confirm the meal preferences this morning, they said the 4th ticket had been flagged. System error, overbooking, something technical." He was lying. I knew the tone. It was the same tone he used when he told contractors their checks were in the mail. But my brain refused to process the malice of it. I looked at my mother. Lydia was busy adjusting the luggage tag on her bag, refusing to meet my eyes. "So, we fix it," I said, my voice rising slightly. "We fix it right now. I can talk to the agent." "Honey," Lydia said, finally turning to me. Her face was composed, a mask of tragic pragmatism. "The flight is full. Gavin tried everything. We didn't want to worry you until we got here and saw if there was a no-show. But look at the line. It is packed. So you're going without me. The question tasted like ash in my mouth. It's non-refundable. Paisley, Gavin said, shrugging as if he were discussing a dinner reservation and not a transcontinental vacation. We can't throw away $20,000 because of a computer glitch. You understand, right? You're the logical one. The agent behind the counter looked uncomfortable, typing furiously, eyes averted. She knew. She could see the passenger manifest. There was no glitch. There was simply no ticket for me. There never had been. I felt the heat rise up my neck. People in line behind us were starting to stare. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my passport on the counter and demand the truth. But I had been trained well by Lydia. Appearance is everything. Never let them see you crack. Don't make a scene. I took 2 weeks off work, I whispered. And you can use them to relax, Lydia said. She reached into her purse. I expected her to pull out a credit card, maybe an apology gift, or cash to cover a cab home. Instead, she pulled out a small, laminated card and pressed it into my palm. I looked down. It was not a credit card. It was a bus pass, a monthly pass for the Denver Regional Transit System. Your car is making that noise again, Lydia said, her voice dropping to a whisper, intimate and condescending. I don't want you driving it all the way back from the airport and getting stranded on the highway. This is safer. Take the A-Line train to Union Station, then the bus. You know the route. I stared at the plastic card. It felt light, insignificant, a piece of trash masquerading as a solution. You want me to take the bus? I asked. You can handle it, she said. Consider it a staycation. You have the whole house to yourself. Just water the plants and bring in the mail. We need someone there anyway. It works out. It works out, I repeated, numb. We will transfer money, Gavin interjected, checking his expensive watch. I will send a transfer every week to your account. You can order takeout. Treat yourself to a spa day here. It will be just like you're on vacation, minus the jet lag. But the ticket... Paisley, stop, Lydia snapped, her voice suddenly sharp, cutting through the ambient noise of the terminal. Don't make this difficult. Don't be selfish. Brielle has been looking forward to this for months. Do not ruin her moment because of a technical error. Brielle, who had been scrolling on her phone this entire time, finally looked up. She offered me a pitying smile that looked more like a smirk. Bring me back a souvenir from the bus station, she said, then giggled as if it were an inside joke. Go on, Lydia said, her tone softening, returning to the fake sweetness that was her trademark. We have to get through security. We are cutting it close. She leaned in, kissed my cheek. Her lips were dry, her perfume cloying, and whispered, Don't make a scene. Paisley, grow up. Then they turned their backs. I stood there, frozen, clutching the handle of my suitcase with one hand and that damn bus pass with the other. I watched them walk away. Gavin's arm was around Lydia's waist. Brielle was bouncing on the balls of her feet. They looked like the perfect American family, successful, happy, going places, and I was the static in the background, the glitch. I watched until they disappeared past the TSA checkpoint. Not once did they look back, not a wave, not a hesitation. They shed me as easily as they checked their bags. The walk out of the terminal was the longest of my life. I had to go against the flow of excited travelers. Families were hugging, reunited, couples were holding hands. I dragged my suitcase, the wheels rumbling loudly on the pavement outside, a sound that echoed the hollowness in my chest. I took the train to Union Station, sitting in a corner seat, watching the flat, brown landscape of Colorado slide by. Then I transferred to the bus. The bus was crowded, smelling of stale sweat and diesel. I sat with my suitcase jammed between my knees, wearing my vacation outfit, a linen sundress that now felt ridiculous and flimsy. When I finally unlocked the front door of the house, the silence hit me like a physical blow. It was a large house, a sprawling 2-story colonial in a gated community, filled with white furniture and fragile decorations. It usually smelled of Lydia's potpourri and Gavin's cigars. Now, It just smelled of absence. I left my suitcase in the hallway. I didn't even unpack. I walked into the kitchen, the marble countertops gleaming under the under-cabinet lighting. On the fridge, the calendar still had Dubai written in Brielle's bubbly handwriting across the dates for the next 3 weeks. I sat on a bar stool and stared at my phone. It sat on the counter, black and silent. I waited. I told myself that maybe Gavin was right. Maybe it was a system error. Maybe they were frantic on the other side of security, calling the airline, trying to get me on the next flight. Maybe they felt terrible. 1 hour passed, then 2. The sun went down, casting long, bruised shadows across the kitchen floor. Finally, my phone buzzed. I snatched it up, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a notification from the family group chat titled, "The Lewis Empire." I opened it, desperate for an apology, or at least an explanation. It was a photo. They were in the first-class lounge in Dubai. They must have landed and immediately connected to Wi-Fi. The photo showed a table groaning under the weight of food lobster tails, towers of macarons, champagne flutes catching the light. Gavin was holding a glass up to the camera in a toast. Lydia was laughing, head thrown back. Brielle was making a peace sign, looking radiant. Below the photo, Gavin had typed a touchdown. The journey was worth every penny. Time to live. No text to me. No. Are you okay? No. Did you get home safe? No. We miss you. I scrolled up. The last message was from me. Sent yesterday. Can't wait to go. The contrast made my stomach turn. I felt a cold prickle of nausea. This wasn't just exclusion. This was erasure. I looked at the bus pass again. It was sitting on the counter where I had tossed it. Lydia had said, "You can handle it." She had said, "Don't make a scene." I thought about the swiftness of Gavin's lie at the counter, the lack of surprise in his eyes, the way they had moved in a phalanx against me, blocking me out with a wall of indifference. I opened my banking app to check my balance, just to reassure myself that I had enough for groceries until Gavin's promised transfer came through. I had been saving aggressively, keeping my funds in a high-yield savings account, but I kept a checking account for daily expenses. The numbers on the screen glared back at me. I frowned. It looked normal, for now. But then I remembered something Gavin had said a week ago. He had asked for my social security card and birth certificate. He said he was updating the family's umbrella insurance policy before the trip. Just a formality. Paisley. Compliance. You know how it is. I had given them to him. I trusted him. He was my stepfather. He had raised me since I was 12. I stood up and walked to Gavin's home office. The door was usually locked, but today it was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was tidy. Too tidy. The shredder bin was full. I went to the filing cabinet where we kept important documents. I pulled open the drawer marked Personal. My folder was there. I opened it. Empty. My breath hitched. I flipped through the other folders. Gavin's was there. Lydia's was there. Brielle's was there. Mine was the only one stripped clean. I walked back to the kitchen, the silence of the house no longer feeling empty. Now, it felt predatory. The bus pass on the counter seemed to mock me. It wasn't a tool for transportation. It was a symbol of my value to them. While they flew first class on a trip paid for by a big deal, I was relegated to public transit and house sitting. But why take my documents? Why the elaborate charade at the airport if they never intended for me to go? They could have just told me I wasn't invited. It would have hurt, but it would have been clean. This was not clean. This was messy in a way that my risk analyst brain found alarming. You don't take someone to the airport just to humiliate them unless you need them to be somewhere specific at a specific time. You don't hand them a bus pass unless you want to ensure they don't have the mobility to come after you. I looked at the photo of the champagne toast again. They looked so happy, so free. I realized then that the heavy feeling in my gut wasn't just disappointment, it was instinct. The same instinct that made me flag a suspicious ledger entry at work. They hadn't just left me behind. They had positioned me. I picked up the bus pass and ran my thumb over the rough plastic edge. I didn't know it yet. Not fully. I didn't know the extent of the red ink that was about to bleed into my life, but standing there in the dark kitchen, illuminated only by the glow of their gluttonous joy on my phone screen, I understood one thing with crystal clarity. The thing they borrowed before they flew away wasn't just my trust, they had borrowed my name. The silence in the house was not peaceful, it was heavy, like a woolen blanket soaked in water. For the first 2 days, I moved through the rooms like an intruder in a museum. I avoided the white sofas in the living room, terrified I might spill something and leave a stain that would serve as a permanent record of my existence there. I stuck to the kitchen island and my bedroom, the only 2 spaces where I felt I had permission to breathe. My life shrank down to the dimensions of a laminated schedule. The bus pass. Lydia had pressed into my hand, became my tether to the outside world. But it was a cruel one. To get to Ridgeway Risk and Compliance by 8 in the morning, I had to leave the house at 6:30. The walk to the bus stop was nearly a mile, dragging my work bag over cracked sidewalks that the Homeowners Association fee apparently did not cover. I learned the rhythm of the Route 15 bus quickly. It smelled of industrial cleaner and exhaust. I sat near the back, clutching my bag, watching the city wake up through windows smeared with grime. It was a stark contrast to the life my family was currently broadcasting. While I was wedged between a construction worker and a college student sleeping against the glass, my phone would buzz with the chirpy notification sound of the family group chat. I told myself I should mute it. I should turn off the notifications and focus on my work, on the compliance reports that needed filing, on the steady, reliable logic of numbers, but I could not look away. It was like picking at a scab. On Tuesday, while I was eating a sandwich I had made from the heels of a bread loaf left in the pantry, my phone lit up. It was a video from Brielle. I tapped play. The screen filled with the golden light of a desert sunset. They were in an open-top Jeep, tearing across sand dunes. Brielle was screaming with delight, her hair whipping around her face like a halo. Gavin was laughing, pointing at the horizon. Lydia was there too, looking impossibly chic in linen, holding a glass of sparkling water as if the desert were just another backdrop for her elegance. Below the video, Brielle had posted a caption, "Finally living." Lydia had reacted with a heart emoji. Gavin posted a photo immediately after. It was a close-up of his wrist. A heavy gold chronograph watch sat against his tanned skin. "Found this beauty in the souk," he wrote. "A man has to treat himself after a good quarter." I stared at the watch. I did the mental math instantly. That watch cost more than my student loans. It cost more than the car I was not allowed to drive. I put my sandwich down. I had lost my appetite. I opened the banking app again. I had been checking it every 4 hours, like a nervous tick. Gavin had said the money would transfer weekly. It was Wednesday now. The account balance remained unchanged. "It is the time zone difference," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "Dubai is 10 or 11 hours ahead. International transfers take time. Maybe the SWIFT code was wrong. Maybe he forgot to hit send because they were on a safari." I tried to cling to these rationalizations, but the analyst in me was already poking holes in them. Gavin was a man who prided himself on financial precision. He did not forget transfers. He did not make banking errors. That evening, I decided to go to the grocery store. I needed milk and eggs. The walk to the nearest supermarket was 20 minutes from the bus stop. I carried the plastic bags home in the rain, the handles cutting into my fingers. When I got inside, dripping wet and shivering, I saw another notification. "Rooftop dinner tonight. The view is to die for." It was a picture of a table set with crystal and silver, overlooking a glittering cityscape that looked like a circuit board made of diamonds. I sat on the floor of the foyer, wet shoes still on, and did something I had never done before. I took a screenshot. I did not know why I did it. Maybe it was just to prove to myself that this was happening, that while I was walking in the rain to buy $6 worth of groceries, they were eating a meal that likely cost $1,000. It felt like I was being gaslighted by my own reality. If I did not save the evidence, I might start to believe that I deserved this, that this disparity was normal. I saved the screenshot to a hidden folder on my phone. Then I went back and screenshotted the watch, the desert video, and the timestamp of every message. Later that night, the house felt colder than usual. I went downstairs to check the thermostat. It was set to a comfortable 70 degrees, yet I could not shake the chill. I decided to check the mail. I had been bringing it in as instructed, piling it on the side table in the hallway, but I had not really looked at it. I sorted through the stack. Most of it was junk mail flyers for landscaping, coupons for pizza, but there were a few envelopes that caught my eye. They were from banks and credit card companies. One envelope, addressed to Gavin, looked odd. The flap was not sealed flat. It rippled slightly. I picked it up. I ran my finger under the flap. It popped open with zero resistance. The glue was dry and non-sticky. It had been opened before. I frowned. I looked at the postmark. It was dated 3 days before they left. I picked up another one, a bank statement addressed to Lydia. Same thing. The envelope had been slit open neatly, likely with a letter opener, and then tucked back in to look unopened. A cold feeling, sharper than the rain, settled in my stomach. Why would they open their own mail and then put it back in the pile? Unless they were filtering it. I sat down on the stairs, surrounded by the white envelopes. I went through them all. Every single piece of financial mail that had arrived in the week leading up to their departure had been opened. It looked like a performance of normalcy. They wanted the pile on the table to look like standard, unattended mail. But someone had checked every single balance, every single transaction, before they walked out the door. My hands were shaking slightly. This was not just carelessness. This was inventory. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother. It rang, and rang, and rang. The person you are trying to reach is not available. I tried Gavin. Straight to voicemail. I tried Brielle. It rang twice, then cut off. She had hit the decline button. I stared at the screen. I could see them online. I could see the little green dot next to Brielle's name on social media. She was uploading a story right now. I typed a message to the group chat. I kept it neutral, stripping the panic from my words. Hey everyone. Hope the dinner was great. Just checking in on the transfer for the house expenses and groceries. I think the international wire might be stuck. Let me know if I need to call the bank on this end. Love you. I watched the screen. Read by Lydia. Read by Gavin. Read by Brielle. No typing bubble appeared. No thumbs up reaction. They had seen it. They had read it while sitting at that crystal-laden table, perhaps passing the phone around and rolling their eyes. Paisley is being annoying again. Paisley is ruining the vibe. I waited 10 minutes, 20, nothing. Then, a new photo popped up from Lydia. It was a selfie of her and Brielle holding cocktails. Caption: cheers to family time. The message was clear. I was not part of the family time. I was the help. I was the ghost back in Denver, haunting their house, asking for crumbs while they feasted. I did not sleep well that night. I dreamed of sand dunes filling the house, burying me alive while Gavin watched from the top of the stairs, checking his gold watch. The next morning was Thursday. I woke up with a headache that pounded behind my eyes. I was running late. I skipped breakfast, grabbed my bag, and ran for the bus. I made it to the office with 5 minutes to spare. My colleagues were gathered in the break room, talking about their weekends. I kept my head down, heading straight for the coffee machine in the lobby. I needed caffeine desperately. I ordered a large black coffee and a bagel. The total came to $8.50. I tapped my debit card against the reader. The machine beeped, a harsh, dissonant sound. Transaction declined. The barista, a young guy with a nose ring, gave me a sympathetic smile. Chip readers are finicky today, he said. Try inserting it. I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. I inserted the card. Processing. Declined. Do you have another card? He asked gently. I froze. I had my credit card, but I used that for emergencies only. My debit card was linked to my checking account. I knew exactly how much was in there. I had been paid 2 weeks ago. After paying my student loan installment and the automatic deduction for my share of the car insurance, I should have had at least $400 left, plenty for a coffee. Let me check my app, I stammered. I stepped out of the line, feeling the eyes of the people behind me burning into my back. I opened my banking app. My fingers were cold and clumsy. I logged in. The screen loaded. Checking account $0.00. I stared at it. I blinked. Sure that I was hallucinating, I refreshed the page. Checking account $0.00. I scrolled down to the transaction history. There was a transfer. It was dated yesterday. Transfer to external account ending in 4492. The entire balance. Swept clean. I did not recognize the account number ending in 4492. I stood in the middle of the coffee shop, the noise of the espresso machines fading into a dull roar. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was another notification from the group chat. I did not look at it. I could not. I looked at my wallet. I had a $5 bill tucked in the back fold. Not enough for the coffee and the bagel. I walked back to the counter. I changed my mind, I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy to my own ears. I am actually not hungry. I walked out of the shop without looking at the barista. I stood on the sidewalk, the Denver sun bright and accusing. The bus pass in my pocket felt heavy now. It wasn't just a ticket. It was a prophecy. Lydia had said, "You can handle it," Gavin had said. "The money will transfer." They were right. The money had transferred, just not to me. I looked at the glass building of Ridgeway Risk and Compliance. I dealt with fraud every day. I knew the patterns. I knew the signs. And as I stood there, penniless and abandoned on a Thursday morning, the pieces finally clicked into a picture I had refused to see. The bus ticket wasn't a gift. It was a distraction. And the silence from Dubai wasn't negligence. It was the sound of a getaway car speeding off. I walked out of the coffee shop and found a narrow alleyway between the brick facade of the office building and a dry cleaner. It was not a dignified place to have a breakdown, smelling faintly of steam and garbage, but it was private. I needed privacy because my hands were shaking so violently that I could barely hold my phone. I dialed the customer service number on the back of my credit card. My debit card was useless, drained to zero, but I needed to know the mechanism of the theft before I could stop it. The automated voice made me punch in my social security number. I did it. I waited through 3 minutes of elevator music, staring at a dumpster, forcing my breathing to even out. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. It was a technique I used before presenting quarterly risk reports to the board. This was just another report. The subject just happened to be my own financial ruin. A woman named Brenda answered. Her voice was flat, bored. "I need to report an unauthorized transfer," I said. My voice sounded surprisingly steady. It was the voice of Paisley the analyst, not Paisley the stepdaughter. "My checking account was drained this morning. All of it." Brenda tapped away on her keyboard. The sound was loud in my ear. "I see the transfer," she said. $2,400 moved to an external account ending in 4492. It was authorized via the mobile app at 6:45 this morning. 6:45. I had been in the shower. "I did not authorize it," I said. "Who owns the external account?" "I cannot give out that information for privacy reasons," Brenda said, reciting the script. "But I can see that the external account has been linked to your profile for 3 days. The 2 micro-deposits used to verify the link were confirmed on Monday. Monday, the day they flew out. "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "Check the access log. What device authorized the link?" "It looks like an iPhone 15 Pro. Location Services tagged it near Denver International Airport. The world tilted on its axis. Monday morning, at the airport." While I was standing there like an idiot holding a bus pass, Gavin must have been on his phone. He was not checking emails. He was finishing the setup he had started days prior. He had linked his account to mine, verified it, and waited until he was safely across the ocean to pull the trigger. "Freeze it," I said. "Freeze everything. Mark it as fraud." "I can freeze the account," Brenda said. "But since the transfer was done with your login credentials on a verified device, the investigation might take up to 90 days. We cannot issue a provisional credit until we determine it was not a family dispute." "It is theft," I snapped. "Freeze it." I hung up. I stood in the alleyway, staring at the brick wall. It was precise. It was calculated. They waited until Thursday to drain the cash because they knew paychecks hit on Fridays for some people. Or maybe they just waited until they had a bill to pay in Dubai. I went back to my desk at Ridgeway. I could not focus on corporate compliance. I had my own forensic audit to conduct. At 10:30 in the morning, my email pinged. It was not a work email. It was a notification from a credit monitoring service I had signed up for years ago and largely ignored. Alert new account opened. I clicked it. The blood drained from my face. A new credit card had been opened in my name. The issuer was a major travel rewards bank. The credit limit was $25,000. The opening date was last Friday, 3 days before the trip. I logged into the credit bureau's portal. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I felt a strange detachment, a cold numbness that allowed me to function. I was no longer a person. I was a processor of data. I looked at the inquiries. There were 4 hard pulls on my credit report in the last week. One for the credit card, one for a personal loan application that was currently pending, and 2 others for retail financing. They were not just spending my cash, they were leveraging my credit score. I had a score of 780. It was pristine. I had worked hard for it, paying off student loans aggressively, never missing a payment, to Gavin, who I knew had a history of complicated business bankruptcies. My credit score must have looked like a fresh, untapped gold mine. I closed my eyes. I needed to see the physical evidence. Digital footprints were one thing, but fraud of this magnitude required physical documentation. I left work at noon. I told my manager I had a family emergency. It was the truth. The bus ride home took 45 minutes. I sat in the back, watching the suburbs roll by. I did not listen to music. I did not look at my phone. I was planning my search pattern. When I got to the house, I went straight to Gavin's office. I did not hesitate at the door this time. I walked in and turned on the overhead light. I went to the filing cabinet. I knew my folder was empty, but I needed to know what was missing specifically. I opened the drawer. Empty hanging folder. I sat in Gavin's leather chair. I closed my eyes and replayed the memory of him asking for my documents. It was 2 weeks ago. We were in the kitchen. He was making an espresso. "Hey, Paisley," he had said, casually tapping the spoon against the cup. "I am reviewing our insurance policies before the trip. Medical, travel, the works. I want to bundle you into our umbrella policy so you have better coverage. It is cheaper if we are all on one family plan. Can you grab your social security card and birth certificate? I need to scan them for the agent." It had sounded so logical, so paternal. Better coverage, family plan. I had brought them to him. I had watched him put them in a folder. I never saw them again. He had not scanned them for an insurance agent. He had kept them. He needed the physical social security card to bypass secondary security questions for opening credit lines. He needed the birth certificate to prove identity if the bank flagged a discrepancy. I opened the deep drawer of his desk. It was locked. I looked around the room. Gavin was not a creative man. He hid keys in predictable places. I checked the top of the door frame. Nothing. I checked under the mousepad. Nothing. I checked the hollow spine of a fake book on the shelf, a copy of The Wealth of Nations. There was a small silver key inside. I unlocked the drawer. It was not full of money. It was full of paper. I started sifting through it, and then I found it. A notepad with handwriting on it. Gavin's jagged scrawl. It was a list. P. Chase Sapphire. Done P. Amex pending P. Nordstrom approved P. Auto loan check or Chic rates P stood for Paisley. He had made a shopping list of credit lines he intended to open in my name. I took my phone out. I photographed the list. I photographed the open drawer. I photographed the key. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I could not afford to be sick. I moved to the pile of mail on the hallway table. I had sorted it yesterday, noticing the opened envelopes, but I had not looked at the content of the ones that were not obviously bank statements. There was a large white envelope from the property management company that managed our gated community and the rental of this house. I had always assumed Gavin owned the house. He talked about property values and equity constantly. I picked up the envelope. It was addressed to Gavin Lewis and Paisley Lewis. My name was on the envelope, I used a letter opener to slice it. Inside was a notice of lease violation and past due rent. I read the document. The words swam before my eyes, then sharpened into focus. Dear tenants, please be advised that the rent for July in the amount of $3,800 has not been received. Furthermore, per the lease renewal agreement signed on June 15th, the primary leaseholder responsibility has been transferred to Paisley Lewis. I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor like a dying bird. June 15th, a month ago, I remembered that day. Gavin had asked me to sign for a package. Just sign here. Honey, the delivery guy is in a rush. He had held a clipboard with a document half covered by a shipping manifest. I had signed a lease renewal. I was not just living in their house, I was the tenant. I was legally responsible for the rent, and they had left for Dubai without paying it. I sat on the floor of the hallway, the marble cold against my legs. The puzzle pieces slammed together with a deafening click. They did not just steal my savings. That was small potatoes. $2,000 was a dinner for them. No, they had stolen my identity to finance their life. They had transferred the liability of their housing to me. They had opened credit cards in my name to fund the trip. They were currently staying in a 5-star hotel in Dubai, eating lobster, and charging it to a card that would send the bill to this address. In my name. I looked at the date on the notice. If the rent was not paid by the 20th, eviction proceedings would begin. Today was the 18th. I had 2 days before I lost the roof over my head, a roof I apparently was paying for. I scrambled up and ran back to Gavin's office. I needed to find that lease. If they transferred it to me, there had to be a copy. I found it in the bottom of the locked drawer, a crisp copy of the lease agreement. I turned to the signature page. There was my signature. It looked like mine, but slightly shaky, a forgery, or the result of that trick with the clipboard. It did not matter. To the landlord, it was binding. And there, listed under occupants, were Gavin, Lydia, and Brielle. They had made me the landlord of my own parasites. My phone buzzed. A text from the group chat. Gavin. Just checked into the suite. The upgrade was totally worth it. Sad you aren't here. Paisley. A photo attached. The suite was massive. Gold fixtures. Floor-to-ceiling windows. I looked at the photo, then I looked at the lease in my hand. The upgrade. They paid for that upgrade with the credit card they opened last Friday. My credit card. I did not reply. I could not let them know I knew. Not yet. If I confronted them now, they would go to ground. They would max out the cards and disappear. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the compliance officer, not the victim. I gathered every piece of paper, the lease, the list from the drawer, the opened bank statements, the credit monitoring alert printed from my phone. I laid them out on the dining room table. It looked like a war room. I took a picture of the spread. This was my evidence. I walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. It was empty. My car, which Lydia had forbidden me to drive because it made a noise, sat in the garage. I went to the garage. I tried the door. Locked. I went back to the kitchen and found the spare key hook. The key to my car was gone. Of course it was gone. They didn't take it because the car was broken. They took it because they couldn't risk me driving to the bank, or driving to a lawyer, or driving to the leasing office too quickly. They wanted me slow. They wanted me on the bus schedule. I pulled the bus pass out of my pocket. It was bent at the corner. Lydia's voice echoed in my head. You can handle it. She wasn't telling me I was capable. She was telling me I was contained. The bus ticket wasn't a gift to help me get around. It was a pair of shackles made of plastic. It was designed to keep me navigating transfers and schedules. Too exhausted and too slow to catch up with the jet stream of their fraud. But they forgot one thing. I work in risk. I track patterns for a living. And now that I saw the pattern, I wasn't going to just cancel the cards. I looked at the bus pass. Really looked at it. It wasn't a shackle anymore. It was my transport to the police station. I put the pass back in my pocket. I wasn't going to run after them. I didn't need a plane ticket to Dubai. I had everything I needed right here on this dining room table to bring them down. The bus ticket wasn't for me to be free. It was to ensure I had no vehicle to chase them. But they underestimated what I could do from a stationary position. I picked up my phone and opened the camera app. I zoomed in on the photo of the suite in Dubai. I could see a room service menu on the table. I was going to track every cent. And when they came back, expecting to find a beaten-down daughter and a pile of paid bills, they were going to find a fortress built out of their own paper trail. The first thing I did was kill Paisley Lewis. At least, the digital version of her that my family had access to. I sat at the kitchen table, which was now covered in a layer of paper so thick it looked like a topographical map of a disaster zone. I opened my laptop and began the systematic shutdown of my financial identity. I logged into the 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. My fingers moved with the muscle memory of a pianist playing a funeral march. I initiated a credit freeze on all 3. It was a simple toggle switch on a screen, but it felt like slamming a heavy iron gate shut. Next came the passwords. I knew Gavin used a variation of his high school mascot and graduation year for everything. I suspected he had guessed my old passwords because I had foolishly written them in a notebook in the kitchen drawer years ago. Thinking it was safe, I changed everything: my email, my remaining bank accounts, my social media. I generated random strings of alphanumeric chaos that no human could guess. Then, I enabled 2-factor authentication on every single platform. Now, if they wanted to log in from a hotel IP address in Dubai, they would need the code sent to the phone currently sitting in my hand. I was locking the doors, one by one. On Friday morning, I took a half-day off work. I could not tell Ridgway the full truth yet that my family was a localized, organized crime ring, so I told them I had a legal appointment regarding a housing dispute. It was not a lie. I went to see Mallory Keene. She was a consumer protection lawyer recommended by a friend from law school I had messaged in a panic the night before. Mallory's office was in a strip mall, sandwiched between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. It did not look like the high-powered firms Gavin liked to hire, but as soon as I walked in, I knew I was in the right place. The room smelled of old paper and aggressive coffee. There were stacks of files on every surface, but Mallory herself was razor-sharp. She was a woman in her 50s with short, steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they had seen every scam known to man. I sat down and started to talk. I felt the words tumbling out of me of the bus pass, the empty bank account, the lease, the Dubai photos, the shame. I felt my voice rising, the hysteria bubbling up. Mallory raised a hand. She did not offer me a tissue. She offered me a pen. "Stop," she said. Her voice was not unkind, but it was firm. "Paisley, you are drowning in the story. The law does not care about the story. It does not care that your feelings are hurt or that your mother is ignoring your texts. The law cares about documentation. You don't need to scream. You need a timeline." She pushed a legal pad toward me. "I need you to build me a skeleton," she said. "Date, time, event, evidence. Strip the emotion out of it. If it is not on paper, it did not happen." I took the pen. "Okay. We are going to treat this like a homicide case," Mallory said, leaning back in her creaky chair. "Except the victim is your credit score." I spent the weekend building the timeline. I turned my living room into a war room. I printed out every single bank statement, every credit alert, and every screenshot from the Lewis Empire group chat. I taped them to the wall. July 14th, 9 a.m. Gavin asked for my documents. July 14th, 2 p.m. Hard inquiry on my credit report from a luxury travel agency. July 17th, 10 a.m. We arrive at the airport. I am handed the bus pass. July 17th, 11:38. A charge for $3,000 hits the new credit card for duty-free Dubai. July 18th, 8 p.m. Brielle posts a photo of herself holding a designer handbag. Caption treats. July 18th, 8:05 p.m. Transaction alert for $2,500 at a boutique in Dubai International Airport. It was sickening. It was perfect. Every moment of their joy was time-stamped directly to a moment of my financial hemorrhage. I was funding the very vacation I had been rejected from. Then came the twist that made my blood run cold. I was digging through the trash folder of our home computer, a shared desktop that sat in the den. Gavin must have thought deleting files was enough. He didn't know I could restore them. I found a scanned PDF titled Loan App PL PDF. I opened it. It was an application for a personal consolidation loan of $50,000. The status was approved, awaiting disbursement. I scrolled to the bottom. There was a signature, Paisley Lewis. I stared at it. It looked like my name. It even had the loop on the L that I used. But the pressure was wrong. The slant was too aggressive. It leaned to the right, just like Gavin's handwriting. I held my own hand up to the screen. My hand had not signed that, but a bank officer, looking at it quickly, would never know. I saved the file to a thumb drive. Then I saved it to the cloud. Then I emailed it to myself. That night, the house was silent. The silence was no longer heavy. It was charged with electricity. I started a new ritual. I opened the voice memo app on my phone. Mallory had told me to document my state of mind, in case they tried to claim I was unstable or complicit later. Entry 4, I whispered into the darkness of the kitchen. Date July 21st. Time 11 p.m. Status: they are still in Dubai. No one has answered my calls for 4 days. I have $3 in my wallet. I ate oatmeal for dinner. I found the loan application today. Gavin forged my signature. He didn't just borrow money. He committed a felony. I feel like I'm cutting off a limb to save the body. On Monday, I went back to Mallory's office. I dropped the binder on her desk. It was 3 inches thick. Here's your timeline, I said. Mallory flipped through it. She stopped at the side-by-side comparison of the handbag photo and the credit card charge. She stopped at the forged loan application. Okay, she said. This is a weapon. Now we fire it. She handed me a packet of forms. This is an identity theft report. You are going to file this with the Federal Trade Commission. It creates a recovery plan. But before you do that, you have to go to the police station. I froze. The police? You need a police report number, Mallory said. Without it, the banks will treat this as a family dispute. They will say, "Oh, honey, just ask your dad to pay it back." With a police report, it becomes a crime. It triggers federal protections that block them from collecting these debts from you. If I file a police report, Gavin could go to jail, I said. The realization hit me hard. Despite everything, the conditioning of 24 years was hard to break. Don't make a scene. Protect the family. Mallory looked me dead in the eye. Paisley, he stole $50,000 in your name. He left you with an eviction notice. He didn't act like a father. He acted like a predator. Do you want to pay that $50,000? Because that is the alternative. I took the forms. No, I don't. Good. Now, about the house. Mallory pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. You said the lease was transferred to you. Yes, I am the primary leaseholder now, and the rent is overdue. Perfect, Mallory said, a grim smile touching her lips. That gives us leverage. If you are the tenant, you have rights, and if they are not on the lease as residents, but merely as occupants, under your authority, you can revoke that authority. She drafted a letter. It was full of legal jargon: breach of contract, fraudulent inducement, constructive eviction. Take this to your landlord, she said. Show him the forgery. Show him the police report number. Tell him you are the victim of identity theft committed by the previous occupants. Ask him to sign a lease addendum that removes them entirely and keeps only you. If he refuses, tell him you will drag the property management company into the fraud investigation for facilitating the illegal lease transfer without proper verification. I left her office feeling like I was carrying a grenade. I went to the leasing office. Mr. Henderson, the property manager, was a man who disliked drama. He looked at me over his glasses, annoyed that I was there to discuss the unpaid rent. Ms. Lewis, he said, sighing, we need the check. Today. You will get the check, I said, my voice steady. But first, we need to fix the mess you helped create. I laid out the timeline on his desk. I showed him the forged signature on the lease renewal. I showed him the police report I had just filed an hour ago at the precinct, the ink on the carbon copy still fresh. My stepfather used my identity to secure this housing without my consent, I said. He is currently out of the country. If you try to evict me, I will tie this property up in court for months proving that you failed to verify the signatory, or we can fix it right now. Mr. Henderson paled. He looked at the police report. What do you want? I want a new lease, I said. Just me. I have a job. I can pay the rent if I'm not paying for their vacation. I want Gavin and Lydia removed from the contract. And because I am the sole tenant, I want the locks changed. Today. He hesitated. That is highly irregular. So is forgery, I countered. 20 minutes later, I walked out with a new lease. By 5 p.m., the locksmith was at the front door. I watched as he drilled out the old core. The sound of the drill was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard. It sounded like freedom. He handed me 2 shiny new silver keys. There you go, miss, he said. Nobody gets in unless they have one of these. I held the key in my fist. I went inside and locked the deadbolt. For the first time in a week, the house felt like mine. It was no longer a waiting room for their return. It was a fortress. I sat down on the couch, exhausted. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind a deep, aching sadness. I looked at the family photos on the mantel. Gavin smiling, Lydia looking regal, Brielle graduating high school. They looked like strangers. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, thinking it was a debt collector. But something made me answer. This is Paisley, I said. Ms. Lewis, this is Detective Miller from the fraud division at the bank, a male voice said. We received your affidavit and the police report number regarding the credit card ending in 5580. Yes, I said. Thank you for calling. I am looking at the transaction history, the detective said, and I am looking at the locations. The card is being used heavily in Dubai. The user seems to have access to your personal identifiers, mother's maiden name, childhood street, first pet. He paused. The silence on the line was heavy. Ms. Lewis? He asked, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious and direct. I need to ask you a standard question. We see this sometimes. The person using your information, do you know who it is? Is it a family member? This was it, the moment of no return. If I said no, the investigation would continue as a hunt for a stranger. If I said yes, I was effectively signing an arrest warrant for my mother and stepfather. I looked at the bus pass on the coffee table. I looked at the new key in my hand. I thought about the staycation they told me to enjoy while they spent my future on champagne. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said clearly. It is my stepfather, Gavin Lewis, and my mother, Lydia Lewis. They are in Dubai right now, and none of it was authorized. Understood, the detective said. We will proceed accordingly. I hung up the phone. The room was very quiet, but it was the silence of a storm that had finally broken. I had just launched the missile. Now, I just had to wait for the impact. The hardest part of the next 24 hours was not the fear, it was the silence. In the game of chess, the most terrifying move is often the one you do not make. A novice player attacks immediately when they see an opening. A master waits. I had spent my entire life being the novice, the stepdaughter who tried too hard to please, who apologized for taking up space, who thanked them for the crumbs. But looking at the new silver key on my keychain, I realized that Paisley the doormat was dead. Paisley the compliance officer had taken her place. I knew that if I called them screaming, accusing them of fraud and theft, they would hang up, they would spin a story, they would gaslight me. Gavin would claim it was a misunderstanding, or worse, they would disappear entirely, moving the money to accounts I could not track before vanishing into another jurisdiction. Fraudsters are like cockroaches. If you turn the light on too fast, they scatter. You have to wait until they are comfortable, fat, and happy in the dark before you bring the boot down. So, I let the group chat live. I kept my phone propped up against my computer monitor while I worked from home on Friday. Every time it pinged, I did not wince anymore. I took a screenshot. Ping, Lydia posted a video of a fountain show. Magical night, ping, Gavin posted a picture of a steak covered in gold leaf, eating like kings. Every photo was a brick they were laying in their own prison cell. They thought they were broadcasting their success. I knew they were broadcasting their location and their spending habits for the forensic accountant I intended to hire if the police moved too slowly. That evening, I packed a bag. I could not sleep in that house alone with the evidence. It felt too fragile. If Gavin had a friend with a key, someone I did not know about, I could lose everything. I took the binder Mallory and I had built, the hard drive with the recovered loan application, and my laptop. I drove to Harper Lane's apartment. Harper had been my best friend since freshman year of college. She was the opposite of me, loud, messy, artistic, and fiercely protective. When she opened her door and saw me standing there with a suitcase and a look of haunted determination, she did not ask questions. She just pulled me inside and poured me a glass of cheap red wine. I laid it all out on her coffee table, the timeline, the forgery, the eviction notice. Harper sat in silence for a long time, reading the papers. She picked up the photo of the bus pass I had taken. "They gave you a bus pass," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "And then they stole $50,000. "Yes," I said. "This is not a family, Paisley," Harper said, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "This is a cartel. They groomed you. They kept you small, kept you desperate for approval, so you wouldn't notice when they started harvesting your organs, except instead of a kidney, they took your credit score." "I filed the police report," I said, sipping the wine. It tasted like vinegar, but it grounded me. "And I have the new lease, but I need to keep the evidence here. If they come back early, if they realize I know—" "Leave it here," Harper said. "My place is a fortress. If Gavin comes here, I will hit him with a cast-iron skillet. I am serious." Having Harper on my side changed the chemical composition of my isolation. I was not just a victim anymore. I was part of a team. We spent the night backing up the files to 3 different cloud servers. We created a digital fortress that Gavin, with his limited tech skills, could never penetrate. Saturday morning, I went back to the house to check the mail. I approached the front door cautiously, scanning the street for strange cars. It was empty. Inside, on the floor where the mail slot deposited the daily delivery, lay a single white envelope. It was from the bank that issued the credit card, the one opened 3 days before their trip. The one I had frozen yesterday. I picked it up. It was the physical statement. They had been so arrogant. They had not even bothered to set up paperless billing. They assumed I would just stack the mail on the table like a good little servant, never daring to open anything addressed to Paisley Lewis if it looked official. Because Gavin handled the finances, I tore it open. The balance was staggering. $12,000 in 5 days. I scanned the itemized list: airline upgrades, hotel deposits, a jewelry store. But then I saw something that made my breath hitch. The billing address. It was my address. This house. They had used my own home as the base of operations for the theft. This was the final nail in the coffin for any "it was a mistake" defense. You do not accidentally type in your stepdaughter's social security number and her home address when applying for a card. You do it with intent. I took a picture of the statement. I added it to the digital folder. Then, my phone buzzed. It was the group chat. Brielle had posted a new series of photos. Shopping spree at the Dubai Mall. Daddy said yes to everything. The first photo showed Brielle posing with 3 large shopping bags from a high-end designer boutique. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, looking like a celebrity. I looked at the time on the message, posted 2 minutes ago. I looked at the transaction alert log on my credit monitoring app. Because I had frozen the card yesterday, any new attempts would generate a declined alert. There it was. Transaction declined, designer boutique Dubai. Amount $4,500. Time 10:03 a. Mountain Standard Time. The timestamp on the transaction attempt matched the timestamp on Brielle's post almost to the second. I felt a cold thrill run down my spine. It was the perfect sync. The visual evidence of the purchase attempt matched the digital record of the fraud. Brielle, in her vanity, had just handed me the smoking gun. She was holding the bags that Gavin had just tried and failed to buy with my identity. The card decline must have just happened. They were standing at the register right now. I could imagine the scene. The cashier handing the card back, Gavin's smile faltering, the confusion, the embarrassment. It was time. I sat down on the white sofa. I held my phone with steady hands. I was done waiting. It was time to pull the string and see who choked. I typed a message into the group chat. "Hey everyone, is everything okay over there? I just got a really weird fraud alert from the bank. It says someone is trying to use a card in my name in Dubai. I am on the phone with the fraud department right now to report it as stolen. Hope you guys are safe." I hit send. I watched the screen. Read by Brielle. Read by Gavin. Read by Lydia. For a long minute, nothing happened. The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. They were panicking. They were huddled together in that mall, surrounded by unpaid merchandise. Realizing that the glitch was coming from inside the house, they could not admit it was them. If they admitted it, they confessed to the crime. But if they did not admit it, I would cancel the card which I already had and cut off their supply. I was forcing them to choose between poverty and confession. My phone rang. It was not a text. It was a voice call. The screen said Dad. I stared at it. The word Dad felt like a slur. I let it ring twice, 3 times. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wonder if I was actually talking to the police. On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Hello?" I said, keeping my voice light, innocent, the dutiful daughter. "Paisley." Gavin's voice was not charming. It was tight, high-pitched, vibrating with a suppressed rage I had never heard before. The smooth salesman was gone. This was the cornered rat. "Dad, is that you?" "The connection is weird," I said. "Paisley, listen to me," he snapped. "What did you do?" "We are at the register and the card is not working." "Which card?" I asked. "I thought you were using your corporate account." "The backup card," he stammered. "The one for emergencies. It is declining. Did you touch anything on your end?" "Oh, you mean the card under my name?" I asked. "The one I didn't open." Silence. Heavy, thick silence. I got an alert. "Gavin," I continued, dropping the dad. "It said someone was trying to charge $4,000. I knew that couldn't be you, because you told me you were paying for everything, so I told the bank it was fraud. Was I wrong?" "You called the bank?" His voice cracked. "Of course," I said. "Identity theft is a serious crime. I didn't want you guys to get in trouble if someone stole my info. Why are you trying to use a card with my name on it?" "Unfreeze it," he hissed. The pretense dropped completely. "Paisley, you listen to me right now. You call them back and you tell them it was a mistake. We are standing here with the bags. We look like idiots. Unfreeze the damn card." "I can't," I said. "Once a fraud report is filed, it is a federal matter. They locked it. They are doing an investigation." "Investigation!" He shouted the word. I could hear Lydia crying in the background. I could hear the murmur of the mall. "Yes, they are tracking the IP addresses and the location data," I said, leaning back into the sofa, looking at the bus pass on the coffee table. "They said whoever did this is going to be facing felony charges. I am just trying to help. Gavin, unless there is something you want to tell me." "You little—" He cut himself off. He took a breath. "Paisley, fix this. We have no access to cash. The hotel holds are on that card. If you don't unlock it, they will kick us out." "That sounds stressful," I said. "But I can't help you. I have to go now. I have a meeting with the detective in an hour to sign the affidavit. I promised to bring them the timeline." "Detective?" Gavin's voice went quiet. It was the quiet of a man watching the guillotine blade start to fall. "What detective?" "The one investigating the theft," I said. "Good luck with the shopping. Gavin, I hope the bus to the airport is running." I hung up. I stared at the phone. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I blocked his number. Then I blocked Lydia's. Then Brielle's. I was not their daughter anymore. I was the witness for the prosecution. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one who was going to be stranded. The silence after I hung up on Gavin did not last long. My phone began to vibrate against the coffee table like a trapped insect. I had blocked their personal numbers, but I had not blocked the rest of the world. The screen lit up with a call from an international number. The area code was from the United Arab Emirates. They were calling from the hotel landline. I stared at the screen. My instinct was to throw the phone across the room and hide under the covers. The old Paisley, the one who apologized when someone else stepped on her foot, wanted to disappear. But I looked at the binder on the table. I looked at the timeline Mallory had made me build. I remembered Mallory's instructions from our meeting that morning. If they call, you answer. But you do not engage. You do not explain. You record. In Colorado, as long as one party consents to the recording, that party being you, it is legal. Get them to admit it. I tapped the screen to start the voice recording app running in the background, took a deep breath that rattled in my chest, and answered the call. Hello, you ungrateful little bitch. Gavin's voice exploded into my ear, distorted by the distance and his own rage. Do you have any idea what you have done? We are standing in the lobby of the Burj Al Arab with our luggage held hostage. They locked us out of the suite. Who is this? I asked, keeping my voice flat. Don't play games with me. Paisley, he screamed. The card declined. The backup card declined. The hotel tried to run the deposit again and it bounced. They are treating us like criminals because you flagged the accounts. I flagged the accounts because they were opened fraudulently, I said. I am protecting my identity. Gavin, if you are authorized to use those cards, surely you can clear it up with the bank yourself. You know I can't do that, he shouted. Because they are under your name. You have to call them, right now. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you gave us permission. But I didn't, I said. Did I? There was a scuffle on the other end of the line, and then my mother's voice came through. It was wet and shrill, the sound of a woman who was losing control of her carefully curated narrative. Paisley, baby, please, Lydia sobbed. Why are you doing this to us? This was supposed to be our special time. We worked so hard. We just wanted to give Brielle a good memory. You wanted to give her a memory by stealing my future, I asked. You stole $50,000. Mom, you forged my signature. We borrowed it, Lydia cried. We were going to pay it back. Gavin has a big commission coming in next month. We would have paid off the cards before you even noticed. We were doing it for the family. For you too. We were going to buy you a car when we got back. You were going to buy me a car with my own money, I asked. Is that why you left me a bus pass? So I wouldn't see the bank alerts? Don't be dramatic, Lydia snapped, her tone shifting instantly from pleading to accusing. We raised you. We put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us. By stranding your mother in a foreign country, you are being incredibly selfish. You are ruining everything over a little paperwork. It is not paperwork, I said. It is a felony. Where's the money? Mom, the $2,000 from my checking account, where did it go? It went to the flight upgrades, Gavin roared from the background. Because we deserve to fly in comfort, and you are going to fix this, Paisley. If you don't call the bank and lift that freeze in the next 10 minutes, I swear to God, you will do what... I cut him off. You are 5,000 miles away. Gavin, you have no money, you have no hotel room, and you have no leverage. I am your father. You are my stepfather, I corrected him. And according to the police report I filed yesterday, you are the primary suspect in an aggravated identity theft investigation. The line went dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the background static of the universe. Police report, Gavin whispered. Case number 44920. I recited. I gave them everything. Gavin, the forged loan application, the credit inquiries, the lease transfer. I gave them the list you wrote in your desk drawer, the one with P next to all the banks. You went into my desk, he hissed. You went into my life, I said. I have to go now. My lawyer advised me not to speak to you without legal counsel present. Lawyer, Lydia shrieked. Paisley, don't you dare. We are family. You don't sue family. You don't rob family. I said. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to put the phone down on the table. I saved the recording. I backed it up to the cloud. I emailed it to Mallory. I sat there for a long time, listening to the clock on the wall tick. I felt sick, physically ill. The confirmation that my mother knew that she was an active participant, justifying it as borrowing, hurt more than the theft itself. She saw me as a resource, an asset to be liquidated for her comfort, not as a daughter. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. It was Detective Miller. Ms. Lewis, he said. His voice was brisk, professional. I have an update on the investigation. Are you free to talk? Yes, I said. We have been coordinating with the bank's internal fraud division, Miller said. And we found something interesting. The loan application, the one for $50,000, was pushed through the underwriting process unusually fast. Usually, a file with your income-to-debt ratio would trigger a manual review. How did it go through? I asked. The system flags were overridden, Miller said. Someone used a manager-level override code to bypass the income verification step. We looked into your stepfather's employment history. It turns out Gavin Lewis worked as a temporary contractor for a credit processing firm in 2019. He didn't work there long, but he worked in the data entry division. I felt a chill. He knew the codes. He knew the architecture, Miller corrected. He knew exactly which banks had the most automated systems, and he knew the specific override codes used by mid-level managers. He didn't just guess. He targeted banks where he knew he could exploit the system. This elevates the charge. Ms. Lewis, this isn't just theft. It is wire fraud and computer tampering. It shows premeditation and sophistication. What happens now? I asked. Now, the bank is going after him, Miller said. They have frozen every asset linked to his Social Security number, not just the ones he opened in your name. His personal accounts, his joint accounts with your mother, everything. They have flagged him as a high-risk financial criminal. His cards are bricks. Ms. Lewis, he couldn't buy a pack of gum anywhere in the world right now. I thought about them in the lobby of the Burj Al Arab, the humiliation, the staff politely but firmly asking them to leave, the mountain of luggage. Thank you, Detective, I said. By that evening, the reality of their situation had set in. The barrage of angry calls stopped. They realized screaming at me wasn't unlocking the money. Now they were in survival mode. I was at Harper's apartment, eating takeout Thai food. When my phone pinged, it was a text message from Lydia. She was messaging me on WhatsApp, likely using the hotel's free Wi-Fi because her phone service had probably been cut off too. Paisley, please, we are at the airport. We are sleeping on the floor. Brielle is hysterical. We have no money for food. I looked at the message. I took a bite of my pad thai. I felt a twinge of guilt. The old conditioning trying to resurface. They are sleeping on the floor. Then I remembered the bus pass. I remembered the eviction notice. I remembered the photo of the lobster. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. If you call the police and tell them it was a misunderstanding, we can fix this. We still have some cash in a safe at home. We can give you $5,000. That is more than what was in your account. Just withdraw the report. I stared at the screen. She was trying to bribe me. She was trying to buy her freedom with money she didn't even have. Money that was probably also stolen or non-existent. Look at this, I said to Harper, handing her the phone. Harper read it and scoffed. $5,000. To cover a $50,000 felony, she is bad at math. She is admitting guilt, I said. She is offering a settlement. Screenshot it, Harper said. That is admissible. I took the screenshot. Then I typed my reply. I kept it cold. I kept it legal. All future communication must be directed to my attorney. Mallory Keene. Her number is attached below. Do not contact me directly again. I hit send. The response was immediate. "You are destroying this family." I blocked her on WhatsApp. I went to the window and looked out at the Denver skyline. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. I felt a strange sense of calm. The worst had happened. The family I thought I had was gone. But in the space they left behind, I was finding something else. I was finding my own spine. I checked my email one last time before bed. There was a notification from the airline. Because my email was still linked to the original family booking, the one they had kicked me off of, I still received the itinerary updates. Flight alteration alert, passenger, Gavin Lewis, Lydia Lewis, Brielle Lewis, new route Dubai, DXB to Denver, Den. Status confirmed. Date tomorrow. They were coming back. They weren't flying first class this time. The ticket class code was Y, economy, and since their cards were frozen, they must have used the last of their return ticket credits to change the flight. Or perhaps the embassy had intervened to deport them. It didn't matter. They were coming home to a house they couldn't enter, to a bank account they couldn't access, and to a daughter they no longer recognized. I forwarded the email to Detective Miller and Mallory. Subject: They are returning. Body: Their flight lands tomorrow at 4 p.m. I will be ready. I closed my laptop. The game of cat and mouse was over. The trap had snapped shut in Dubai. Now, the hunters were being shipped back in a cage, and I would be waiting on the tarmac not with a welcome sign, but with a binder full of evidence that weighed more than their luggage. The hours leading up to their arrival were not filled with panic. Panic is what happens when you are unprepared. Panic is the feeling of being handed a bus pass when you are expecting a boarding pass. What I felt now was the cold, focused clarity of a surgeon scrubbing in for a complex operation. The house was clean. I had spent the morning vacuuming the carpets and wiping down the counters, erasing the physical traces of my own stress. I wanted the stage to be immaculate. I wanted them to walk into a home that looked exactly like the one they left, only to find that the foundation had been replaced with reinforced concrete that they could not break. My lawyer, Mallory, had been explicit about the rules of engagement. "Do not let them drag you into the mud," she had told me over the phone that morning. "They will try to make this emotional. They will talk about blood and loyalty and how they changed your diapers. You must speak only in facts. You are a broken record. You repeat the law, you repeat the boundaries, and you refer them to me." Harper was sitting on the newly leased white sofa, acting as my sparring partner. She was playing the role of Gavin. "But Paisley," Harper said, pitching her voice low and whiny, mimicking my stepfather's manipulative tone. "We just need a place to sleep. We are exhausted. How can you lock us out of our own home?" I stood by the fireplace, my posture rigid. "This is not your home. Gavin, the lease is in my name. You are not listed as a resident. You have no legal right to be here." "Good," Harper said, dropping the character. "But he is going to push harder. He is going to try to walk past you." "I have the new keys," I said, "and the deadbolt is engaged. He can't walk past a locked door." "And Lydia?" Harper asked. "She is going to cry. She's going to do that thing where she touches her chest and acts like she is having a heart attack." I took a breath. "I will tell her that if she is having a medical emergency, I will call 911, but I will not open the door." It sounded harsh when I said it out loud. A week ago, the idea of leaving my mother on the doorstep would have been impossible. But a week ago, I didn't know she had looked me in the eye and lied about a flight glitch while her husband was actively stealing my identity. I imagined what was happening to them right now. I closed my eyes and pictured the cabin of the economy flight. They would be cramped. Gavin's legs would be jammed against the seat in front of him. There would be no champagne, no gold leaf steaks, just the hum of the engine and the terrifying knowledge that they were flying toward a disaster of their own making. Brielle was the one I actually felt a flicker of pity for. Just a flicker. She was 19, spoiled, and oblivious. But she wasn't the mastermind. She was just the beneficiary. I imagined her in that middle seat. No Wi-Fi. Unable to post her heavily filtered reality to the world. For the first time in her life, she was learning that the fun had a price tag, and the credit limit had been reached. They were probably fighting. Hushed. Vicious whispers in the dark cabin. Gavin blaming the bank. Lydia blaming Gavin for getting caught. Brielle blaming them both for ruining her image. They were coming back to put out a fire. They didn't realize I wasn't the fire. I was the arson investigator. I went back to the dining room table. The war binder, as Harper called it, sat in the center. It was organized with color-coded tabs. Tab 1, the bank statements. Tab 2, the credit report. Tab 3, the police report. Tab 4, the lease. I had been digging through my old emails all morning, looking for anything I might have missed, any other tendrils of financial control they had established. I searched for automatic payment. I found a confirmation email from the electric company dated 8 months ago, and another from the water board. But the one that made my stomach drop was a notification from the portal we used to pay rent. AutoPay setup confirmation. Date November of last year. Source checking account ending in 1140. Trigger condition insufficient funds in primary source. Account 1140 was mine. Lydia had set this up almost a year ago. She had added my account as the backup funding source for the rent. She hadn't just decided to use me because of the trip. She had built a trapdoor under my finances months ago, just in case Gavin's commissions dried up. I was their insurance policy. I was the safety net they planned to fall into, without ever asking if I could catch them. They had been planning to bleed me dry long before they booked the tickets to Dubai. The trip was just the accelerator. "Look at this," I said to Harper, showing her the screen. She had my routing number saved in the rent portal for a year. Harper shook her head. "That is premeditated. That is not borrowing in an emergency. That is architectural. I printed it," I said, sliding the paper into the binder. Then, I opened my banking app again. I wanted to look at one specific transaction, the one that started it all. I scrolled back to the day of the flight. I looked at the debit card history. There it was. Regional Transportation District, $55. Time 8:45 in the morning. Location airport kiosk. I stared at the line item until the numbers blurred. At the airport, when Gavin had realized my ticket was missing, and Lydia had pressed the monthly bus pass into my hand, acting like it was a thoughtful consolation prize they hadn't even paid for it. Gavin must have taken my card, the one he had borrowed, to pay for a coffee earlier while we were unloading the bags, and used it to buy the pass at the kiosk while I was standing 10 feet away, guarding the luggage. They used my own money to buy the ticket that sent me away from them. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was jagged and dark. "What is it?" Harper asked, looking concerned. "The bus pass," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "They bought it with my card. Harper, I paid for my own humiliation. I paid $55 to be sent home so they could rob me." Harper stood up and walked over to me. She put a hand on my shoulder. "That," she said, pointing to the binder, "goes on the very first page." I printed the transaction receipt. I taped it to the front of the binder. It was no longer just a piece of plastic. It was the symbol of their absolute contempt for me. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Mr. Henderson, the property manager. Subject notice of restricted access. "Dear Ms. Lewis, per your request and the provided legal documentation, we have updated the building security protocols. The gate codes previously assigned to Gavin and Lydia Lewis have been deactivated. We have informed the security patrol that they are no longer permitted on the premises without your explicit escort. If they attempt to force entry, security has been instructed to contact the local police immediately. Attached is a copy of the formal notice sent to their email on file." I felt a wave of relief. It was real. The walls were up. "Mr. Henderson came through," I said. "Their gate codes are dead." "Good," Harper said, "because they are going to try the gate first. When that doesn't work, they are going to call you." "I won't answer," I said, "and then they will try to tailgate someone else in." Harper predicted. "They will get to the front door. And the key won't work," I finished. We had built a gauntlet. At 2 p.m, Detective Miller called. "Ms. Lewis," he said, I see the flight alert. They land at 4. I want to come over. To the house? I asked. Yes, Miller said. I want to be there when they arrive, or shortly after. It is better if we get a statement from them while they are still disoriented. And frankly, given the amount of money involved, I want to make sure you are safe. Domestic financial disputes can get volatile when the perpetrators realize the jig is up. You think they would hurt me? I asked. I think people who steal $50,000 from their daughter are capable of justifying a lot of things, Miller said. I will be parked down the street. Call me the second they arrive, or I can sit in your kitchen. Your choice. Wait in the street, I said. I need to do this part myself. I need them to see me standing there, alone. I need them to see that I didn't need a bodyguard to take them down. Okay, Miller said. But I will be close. One text. And I'm at the door in 30 seconds. Thank you, Detective. I hung up and looked at the clock. 3 hours. I went upstairs to shower. I washed my hair. I put on my best work clothes, a tailored navy suit I wore for board presentations. I put on makeup. I didn't want to look like the victim. I wanted to look like the CEO of the company they had just tried to embezzle from. When I came back downstairs, Harper had arranged the dining room. She had placed the binder in the center of the table. Beside it, she placed the 2 new silver keys, and beside that, the crumpled bus pass. It looked like an altar to the truth. You look dangerous, Harper said, nodding in approval. I feel dangerous, I said. I feel heavy, but a good kind of heavy, like an anchor. We sat in the living room as the afternoon light began to stretch across the floor. The house was silent. The air conditioner hummed. It was the kind of quiet you hear in a courtroom before the judge walks in. You know, I said, staring at the dust motes dancing in the light. All those years, I thought I was the weak one. I thought I was the one who needed them. I stayed here. I paid rent. I did the chores. I fixed their tech. I organized their lives because I thought that was the price of admission to the family. I thought if I was useful enough, they would love me. Harper didn't say anything. She just let me speak. But they didn't keep me around because they loved me, I continued. They kept me around because I was useful. And the second they thought they didn't need me, the second they thought they had a big payday, they cut me loose. But they were too arrogant to realize that I was the one holding the safety net. They cut the net while they were still falling. I looked at the front door. The wood was solid. The lock was new. I am not scared. Harper, I said. I am just finished. You are ready, Harper corrected. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. I am not waiting for them to apologize. I know they won't. They can't. To apologize, they would have to admit they see me as a person, and they don't. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the street. A car turned the corner. But it was just a neighbor. I am not waiting for an apology, I repeated, the words tasting like steel. I am waiting for them to face it. I want to see their faces when they realize that the daughter they left at the curb is the one who owns the pavement. I turned back to Harper. Let them come, I said. The bus stops here. The sound of their return was not the triumphant fanfare they had likely imagined when they booked the trip. It was the heavy, grinding idle of a discount airport shuttle van pulling up to the curb. I watched from the living room window, standing just behind the sheer curtain, invisible to them, but seeing everything. Harper stood behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. A silent anchor. They looked wrecked. The 20-hour journey in economy class had stripped away the glossy veneer of the Lewis Empire. Gavin's linen shirt was wrinkled and stained with what looked like coffee. Lydia's hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was flat and frizzy. Brielle dragged her feet, clutching a neck pillow, looking less like an influencer and more like a tired teenager who had been denied Wi-Fi for a day. They hauled their luggage up the driveway. The wheels of the heavy suitcases clattered loudly on the concrete. I saw Gavin stop at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked up at the house at the windows where I stood with a mixture of entitlement and fury. He marched up the steps, fished his keys from his pocket, and jammed the gold-colored key into the lock. He turned it. Nothing happened. He turned it again, harder this time, putting his shoulder into the wood. The deadbolt did not budge. The new cylinder I had installed 2 days ago held fast. "What the hell?" I heard him mute through the glass. He pulled the key out, looked at it, and shoved it back in. He rattled the handle violently. "Paisley." Lydia's voice cut through the air. It was not a question. It was a summons. "Paisley, open this door. The lock is stuck." Gavin started pounding, a heavy rhythmic thudding that shook the frame. "Open the damn door. I know you are in there." I took a breath. I smoothed the front of my navy suit. I looked at Harper. She nodded. I walked to the door. I did not open it. I simply unlocked the inner latch just enough to open it 3 inches, keeping the heavy security chain engaged. I looked out at them through the narrow gap. "The lock isn't stuck," I said. My voice was calm, distinct, carrying easily over Gavin's heavy breathing. "Paisley." Gavin shoved his face toward the gap. His eyes were bloodshot. "Take this chain off. Now. We are exhausted. We have been traveling for 2 days. Open the door." "I can't do that," I said. "What do you mean you can't?" Lydia pushed past Gavin, her face appearing in the sliver of space. She looked aged, her makeup smeared. "Stop this nonsense immediately. We live here. Let us in." "Actually, you don't," I said. "Not anymore." "Excuse me?" Lydia scoffed. A desperate, incredulous sound. "This house is leased to the primary tenant," I recited, the words coming from memory, cold and legal. "As of Tuesday, the lease was amended. The only person with legal right of entry is the leaseholder. That is me. You are not on the lease, Gavin. Neither are you, Mom. And since you are not residents, and you have made threats against my financial safety, I cannot allow you inside." "Have you lost your mind?" Gavin roared. He kicked the bottom of the door. "I pay the rent on this house. It is my house." "You haven't paid the rent in 2 months," I corrected him. "I paid it. I paid the arrears to stop the eviction you left me with. The management company has transferred full possession to me. I am going to break this door down." Gavin shouted, stepping back and looking around for something to use as a ram. "And then I am going to call the police and have you arrested for trespassing on my property." "That won't be necessary," I said, stepping back slightly to reveal the interior of the hallway behind me. "I already called them." As if on cue, a black sedan that had been idling down the street pulled up to the curb. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, from the passenger side of a second car. Detective Miller emerged. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He was wearing a cheap gray suit and an expression of grim satisfaction. Gavin froze. He looked at the police, and for a split second, a look of relief crossed his face. He thought they were his cavalry. He thought he could charm them, show them his ID, and have them force me to open the door. He turned to the officers, putting on his best aggrieved homeowner face. "Officers, thank God. My stepdaughter has locked us out. She is having some kind of mental episode. We just want to get into our home." Detective Miller walked past the uniformed officers. He didn't look at Gavin's extended hand. He looked at me through the crack in the door. "Ms. Lewis?" Miller asked. "Yes. Detective," I said. "I am letting you in." I closed the door to slide the chain off, then opened it wide. Gavin tried to surge forward, but a uniformed officer stepped in his path, a hand raised to his chest. "Hold on, sir. Step back." "But that is my house," Gavin sputtered. "Actually, sir," Miller said, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. "According to the property management records and this active investigation, this residence is the secured location of the victim. We are going to need you to stay on the porch." "Victim," Lydia whispered. She looked from Miller to me. "What is going on?" "Come inside, detective," I said. "I have the supplemental evidence on the table." Miller nodded to the officers. "Bring them in, but keep them in the entryway. Nobody goes further until I say so." They were escorted into the foyer like prisoners of war. They dropped their expensive luggage on the floor. The house smelled of lemon polish and justice. They looked around, disoriented by the cleanliness, by the silence, by the fact that I was standing in the dining room archway, looking down at them not as a daughter, but as a prosecutor. Lydia's eyes traveled past me to the dining room table. She saw it, the binder. It was 3 inches thick, open to the page with the colored flowchart of the money laundering. Beside it lay the stack of bank letters, and right on top, taped to the front, was the receipt for the monthly bus pass. Lydia's face went the color of old ash. She grabbed Gavin's arm. Her grip was so tight her knuckles turned white. She knew. In that instant, she realized this wasn't a tantrum. It was a dossier. "Paisley," she quavered. "What is all that?" "That is the timeline, Mom," I said. "It starts with the day you opened my mail. It ends with the day you tried to buy a Gucci bag with a card opened in my name." "We didn't," Gavin started, but his voice lacked its usual boom. He was looking at Miller, who was now standing by the table, putting on a pair of latex gloves to handle the documents. "We didn't steal anything." Gavin pivoted, his eyes darting around the room. "It was a family arrangement. We talked about it. Paisley agreed to let us use her credit to build points. She knows that—" He looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading, begging me to play along with the lie one last time. "Just nod. Paisley. Just be the good girl." "I never agreed to anything," I said. "I agreed to watch the house. I didn't agree to finance a $50,000 vacation." "Liar," Gavin shouted. Stepping forward, the police officer put a hand on his belt. Gavin stopped. "She is lying. She is jealous because we didn't take her. She is making this up." And then, the silence was broken by a voice that had been quiet until now. Brielle was standing by the door, leaning against her suitcase. She looked between Gavin's red face and my calm one. She looked at the binder. She looked at the police. "Wait," Brielle said. Her voice was small, confused. "Dad, you said she signed the papers." Gavin whipped around. "Shut up, Brielle." "No," Brielle said, stepping away from him. "In the hotel, when the card declined, you told Mom that Paisley must have messed up the authorization. You said she signed the loan papers before we left. You said she agreed to handle the bills while we were gone." She looked at me. "I thought you knew. Paisley, Mom said you were treating us." The room went dead silent. It was the twist of the knife. Brielle, in her selfish naivety, had just confirmed the conspiracy. She confirmed that they had built a narrative to keep her happy, a narrative that relied on my complicity, which they had fabricated. "I didn't sign anything, Brielle," I said softly. "Gavin forged my signature. That is why the police are here." "I didn't know," Brielle stammered. She looked at her new handbag, the one sitting on top of her suitcase. Suddenly, it looked like stolen goods. Gavin looked at Lydia. He grabbed her shoulder, trying to pull her toward the corner of the hallway, away from the detective. "Lydia, we need to talk. We need to get our story. We need to discuss this privately. Tell her to stop this." "Sir," Detective Miller barked, "stay where you are. There is no private discussion. You are being detained for questioning regarding an active felony fraud investigation." "I want to talk to my wife," Gavin shouted. "You can talk to your lawyer," Miller said. "Right now, you are going to listen to me." Lydia broke free from Gavin's grip. She took 2 steps toward me. Her eyes were filling with tears, the weaponized tears I had seen her use 1,000 times to get out of speeding tickets or to guilt me into doing her chores. "Paisley," she wept, reaching out a hand. "Baby, please, look at what you are doing. Police. In our house. Think about the neighbors. Think about Brielle. We can fix this. We can sit down, just us, and work out a payment plan. I will sell my jewelry. I will do anything. Just tell the nice officer to leave. Please, I am your mother." I looked at her hand. It was shaking. It was the same hand that had pressed the bus pass into my palm a week ago. "You are my mother," I said. "But you are also his accomplice." "How can you be so cold?" she cried. I told you to handle things while we were gone. I trusted you. I am handling it, I said. My voice did not waver. You told me to be independent. You told me to figure it out. So I did. I figured out where the money went. I figured out who stole it. And I figured out how to stop it. Paisley, she screamed, a raw, ugly sound. You asked for a grown-up daughter, I said. Here she is. I turned to Detective Miller. You have the files. Detective, you have the recording of the phone call where they admitted to the charges, and you have the witness statement from Brielle confirming they discussed the deception. Miller nodded. He turned to Gavin. Gavin Lewis, Miller said, his voice heavy with authority. I am notifying you that you are a person of interest in a federal investigation regarding bank fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. We have a warrant to seize your electronic devices and financial records. Gavin opened his mouth to speak, to bluster, to threaten, but he looked at the binder on the table. He looked at the hard set of Miller's jaw. He looked at me, standing in my suit, untouchable behind the invisible wall of the law, for the first time in the 12 years I had known him. Gavin Lewis closed his mouth. He slumped. The air went out of him. He looked small. And Mrs. Lewis, Miller continued, turning to Lydia, we will need to interview you separately regarding your knowledge of these transactions. Lydia didn't answer. She just looked at me. Her eyes were wide with a horror that had nothing to do with jail and everything to do with the realization that she had lost her control over the one thing she thought she owned completely, me. Take them, Miller said to the officers. We will do the interviews at the station. This house is a sealed crime scene. Can I get a change of clothes? Gavin asked, his voice a pathetic whisper. No, I said. Those clothes belong to the residents. You are just a visitor. I watched as the officers guided them out the door. Brielle followed, looking back at me one last time, confused and terrified. I stood in the doorway as they were loaded into the back of the police cars. The neighbors were watching from their porches. The sun was going down. I felt Harper squeeze my hand. It is done, she whispered. No, I said, watching the red and blue lights flash against the darkening sky. The drama is done. The paperwork is just beginning. But as I closed the door and turned the lock, the click echoing loudly in the empty house, I realized that for the first time in my life, the silence inside wasn't lonely. It was clean. The days following the arrest were not filled with screaming matches or dramatic confrontations. Real justice, I learned, is quiet. It is the sound of a printer whirring, the scratch of a pen on an affidavit, and the dull thud of a heavy stamp hitting a document. The drama of the police lights faded, replaced by the sterile, fluorescent reality of the legal system. I spent the next 48 hours in Mallory Keene's office, turning the war binder into a formal legal weapon. We filed a supplementary statement to the police report. I handed over the screenshots of Lydia's text messages, the ones where she offered me $5,000 to drop the charges. This is admissible as evidence of consciousness of guilt, Mallory said, clipping the printout to the file. Innocent people do not offer bribes to silence the victim. They offer alibis. Your mother just tried to buy you off with 10% of what she stole. She didn't even have the $5,000, I said, staring at the text. She was probably going to open another card to pay it. Gavin and Lydia hired a lawyer. His name was Arthur Sterling, a man who wore suits that were too shiny and smelled of desperation. He was not a high-powered corporate attorney. He was the kind of lawyer you hire when your assets are frozen and you are scraping the bottom of the barrel. Their defense strategy, as outlined in their initial response to the protective order I requested, was predictable. They didn't deny spending the money. They denied the intent to steal. They tried to paint a picture of a distraught family and a vindictive, jealous daughter. Ms. Lewis is aggrieved because she was excluded from a family vacation. Sterling wrote in his brief, "This retaliation is an emotional response to a domestic misunderstanding, not a criminal act. They are calling me jealous," I told Mallory, reading the document. They stole $50,000, left me with an eviction notice, And they think I am doing this because I wanted to see the Burj Khalifa. It is all they have, Mallory said calmly. They can't argue the facts. The IP addresses match. The signatures don't match. The money is gone. So they have to argue the character. They want to make you look unstable. But we have the timeline. The timeline was our shield. It showed the date the credit card was opened days before the glitch at the airport. It showed the auto-pay setup for the rent from a year ago. It showed the systematic draining of my checking account. Jealousy doesn't have timestamps. Fraud does. The first victory came from the housing situation. Mr. Henderson, the property manager, wanted nothing to do with a criminal investigation. He issued a formal trespass notice against Gavin and Lydia. They are barred from the property, Mr. Henderson told me over the phone. If they set foot on the driveway, we call the police. You are the sole leaseholder. Ms. Lewis, we have changed the access codes. They cannot get past the gate. I felt a weight lift off my chest. My home was finally safe, but I needed to be safe outside the home too. We went to court for the preliminary hearing regarding the temporary restraining order. I sat on the left side of the aisle. Gavin and Lydia sat on the right. They looked smaller without their expensive luggage and their bravado. Gavin was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt. His bespoke suits were likely locked in the house he couldn't enter. Lydia refused to look at me. She stared straight ahead, her face a mask of tragic martyrdom. Brielle was there too, sitting 2 rows behind them. She looked lost. For the first time, she wasn't on her phone. She was watching me. The hearing was short. Mallory presented the police report, the text messages, and the evidence of financial identity theft. Your Honor, Mallory said to the judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose. The defendants have not only stolen the plaintiff's identity, but have used their knowledge of her personal history to bypass security questions. They have harassed her via phone and text, demanding she commit perjury to aid them. We are asking for a complete no-contact order. Sterling tried to object. Your Honor, these are parents. They wish to reconcile with their daughter. They wish to manipulate a witness. The judge corrected him. Order granted. No direct contact. No third-party contact. All communication goes through counsel. If Mr. or Mrs. Lewis sends so much as a birthday card, they will be held in contempt. As we walked out of the courtroom, Arthur Sterling approached Mallory. Gavin and Lydia stood behind him, looking like angry ghosts. My clients are willing to discuss a settlement, Sterling said, adjusting his tie. To avoid the mess of a trial, they are willing to offer a repayment plan, 20% down, and monthly installments for the rest. If Ms. Lewis agrees to drop the civil suit and write a letter of leniency for the criminal case, Mallory didn't even look at me. She knew the answer. We are not a bank, Mr. Sterling, Mallory said. We don't do payment plans for stolen goods, and we certainly don't trade justice for a promise of payment from people who are currently unemployed and under federal investigation. It is a generous offer, Sterling said. Considering they are family, the offer is rejected, Mallory said. We are seeking full restitution, plus damages for emotional distress and legal fees, and the criminal charges are out of our hands. That is up to the district attorney now. Gavin made a noise in his throat, a growl of frustration. Lydia put a hand on his arm to restrain him. I walked past them. I didn't look at Gavin. I didn't look at Lydia. But as I passed the bench where Brielle was sitting, I stopped. She looked tired. Her tan from Dubai was fading, leaving her skin looking sallow. She was wearing a hoodie, not the designer clothes she had flaunted on Instagram. Paisley, she whispered. Mallory tensed beside me, ready to intervene. Ms. Lewis, remember the no-contact order. She is not the defendant, I said softly to Mallory. She is just the witness. I looked at my stepsister. What is it? Brielle? Did you? Brielle hesitated. She looked at her parents, who were arguing with their lawyer near the exit, then back at me. Did you really have $0 when we were in the desert? It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of the entire betrayal. I had $0, I said. And I had a negative balance because of the overdraft fees from the rent you guys didn't pay. I was eating plain oatmeal, Brielle, while you were posting pictures of lobster. Brielle flinched. Mom said you had savings. She said you were just being stingy. She said the bus pass was a joke you guys had. The bus pass wasn't a joke, I said, my voice steady. It was the only way I could get to work to make money that they were stealing as fast as I earned it. Brielle looked down at her hands. I didn't know about the oatmeal. Now you know, I said. You are an adult. Brielle, you can choose which version of the truth you want to believe, but the math doesn't lie. I walked away. I didn't wait for her to apologize. The crack in her worldview was enough. The following week, the depositions began. This was the part I had dreaded sitting in a conference room across from them, listening to their version of reality. Lydia went first. She sat at the long mahogany table, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked aged, the stress of the last 10 days carving deep lines around her mouth. Mallory led the questioning. Mrs. Lewis? Mallory asked. Did you or did you not access Paisley Lewis's online banking portal on July 17th? I don't recall the specific date, Lydia said, her voice thin. I handle the family finances. I move money around all the time. It is a fluid situation. Is Paisley Lewis's personal checking account part of the family finances? Mallory asked. We are a family, Lydia said, her voice gaining a little strength, a little indignation. We share. I fed her for 20 years. I clothed her. I thought we had an understanding. What is mine is hers, and what is hers is mine. So you admit to taking the money. I admit to borrowing resources to ensure the family could have a much-needed break. Lydia snapped. She looked at me then, her eyes wet and angry. I was tired. Paisley, you don't know what it is like, managing this house, dealing with Gavin's business stress. I just needed a rest. I needed to breathe. Was that so wrong to want a few weeks of peace? I stared at her. The narcissism was breathtaking. She truly believed that her fatigue justified my financial ruin. She believed her need for a vacation superseded my need for food and shelter. I leaned forward. Mallory tried to signal me to stay quiet, but I had to speak. You needed a rest, I repeated. So you stole my identity. I didn't steal your identity, Lydia spat. I used your credit. There is a difference. No, Mom, I said. Rest is sleeping in on a Saturday. Rest is reading a book. Rest does not require you to forge my signature on a $50,000 loan application. Rest does not require you to leave your daughter with a bus pass and an eviction notice. I did it for us, she cried, so we could come back refreshed, so we could be a happy family again. We were never a happy family, I said. We were a host and a parasite, and the host is done feeding you. The court reporter's fingers flew across the stenotype machine, capturing every word. Lydia slumped back in her chair, realizing that her emotional appeal had just been transcribed as a confession. The final pretrial hearing was set for 2 weeks later. The forensic accounting report came back during that time. It was damning. It showed a clear pattern. Gavin had been testing the waters for months, small transfers, credit checks, grooming my financial profile to be harvested. The Dubai trip wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was the cash-out phase of a long con. At the hearing, the judge reviewed the evidence. The defense had nothing. No receipts proving I authorized the spending. No texts from me approving the loans. Just their own desperate assertions that I was a jealous child. The judge, the Honorable Justice Vance, looked over his glasses at Gavin. Mr. Lewis, the judge said, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of elder abuse, but it is rare that I see the reverse parents predating on their adult child with such systematic precision. You opened 7 credit lines in 4 days. You drained a checking account to the cent. You left this young woman facing homelessness. It was a misunderstanding of permissions, Your Honor, Gavin tried to say, though his voice shook. It was a raid, the judge said. I am setting a date for the final ruling on damages, and I am warning you right now, If you do not produce a full accounting of the remaining assets, if there are any assets left, you will be held in contempt. The court is inclined to grant the plaintiff's request for treble damages due to the willful and malicious nature of the fraud. Trapans. Treble damages, 3 times the amount stolen. Gavin's face went white. He did the math. $150,000. He didn't have it. He would never have it. We will see you in 2 weeks for the final judgment, the judge said. Case adjourned. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Denver sunlight. The air was crisp. I took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the phantom weight of the debt they had piled on me. I felt light. Mallory walked beside me. You did good. Paisley, you held the line. They are going to lose everything, aren't they? I asked. They already lost the important thing. Mallory said, They lost you. I looked toward the parking lot. I saw Gavin and Lydia arguing by their car, a beat-up rental. Not their usual luxury SUV. Brielle was standing apart from them, looking at her phone. She looked up, saw me, and for a second, she didn't look away. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Then she got into the back seat. They drove away. I turned to Mallory. What happens next? Next, Mallory said, checking her watch. We go back to my office and we draft the final settlement terms. We decide exactly how much of their future wages we are going to garnish for the next 10 years. And then you go home. Home, I repeated. It wasn't their house anymore. It was mine. The lease said so. The lock said so. And soon, the court order would say so. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against a piece of paper. It was the old bus pass. I had kept it as a reminder. I pulled it out and looked at it in the sunlight. It looked flimsy, cheap, a piece of trash. I walked over to the trash can on the corner. I hovered my hand over the opening. Then I stopped. No, I wouldn't throw it away. Not yet. I put it back in my pocket. I would frame it. I would put it on the wall of the home office I was going to build in Gavin's old den. I would hang it right next to my degree. It wasn't a symbol of my poverty anymore. It was the receipt for my freedom. It cost $55, paid for with my own stolen money. But it was the best investment I had ever made. It was the ticket that took me away from the airport, away from the flight, and straight into the reality where I finally learned how to fight. Ready? Mallory asked. Ready, I said. We walked down the steps of justice, not running, not hiding, just walking, one step at a time, the way you walk when you are no longer carrying anyone else on your back. The final hearing did not feel like a battle. It felt like an autopsy. The courtroom was sterile, smelling of lemon floor cleaner and old wood, a stark contrast to the chaotic, sun-drenched airport terminal where this nightmare had begun 3 weeks ago. I sat next to Mallory Keene, my spine pressing against the hard wooden bench, watching the machinery of the law grind Gavin and Lydia into dust. Judge Vance did not waste time with theatrics. He had the forensic accounting report, the police affidavits, and the supplementary evidence regarding the forgery. The facts were not up for debate. The only thing left to decide was the severity of the consequences. When the ruling came down, it was absolute. The court finds that the debts incurred under the name of Paisley Lewis between July 14th and July 22nd were the result of fraudulent activity, Judge Vance stated, his voice echoing in the quiet room. The plaintiff is absolved of liability for the credit lines opened with Chase, American Express, and the personal loan provider. These institutions are ordered to remove the inquiries from her credit report immediately and pursue recovery directly from the perpetrators. I felt my shoulders drop 2 inches. It was over. The $50,000 anchor that had been tied around my neck was cut loose. I was no longer drowning, but the judge wasn't finished. He turned his gaze to Gavin. My stepfather sat hunched over, looking like a man whose suit had suddenly become 2 sizes too big for him. Mr. Lewis, the judge continued, your actions constitute aggravated identity theft and wire fraud. Because of the sophistication of the crime, specifically the use of internal override codes to bypass banking security, This court is referring your case to the district attorney with a recommendation for prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. Until then, you are liable for full restitution of the funds spent, plus treble damages to the plaintiff for the willful distress caused. Gavin made a noise that sounded like a balloon deflating. He covered his face with his hands. He knew what that meant. He would be uninsurable. He would never work in finance or real estate again. His reputation, the only currency he truly cared about, was bankrupt. Lydia was next. She wasn't facing jail time in the same way, but her sentence was perhaps more painful for a woman like her. She was facing irrelevance. "Mrs. Lewis," the judge said, "while the evidence suggests Mr. Lewis executed the technical aspects of the fraud, your text messages and use of the funds make you a willing beneficiary. You are jointly liable for the civil damages. Furthermore, the temporary restraining order is hereby made permanent for a period of 5 years. You are to have no direct contact with the plaintiff." Lydia gasped. "5 years, Your Honor. She is my daughter." "Then you should have treated her like one," Judge Vance said, closing the file. "Case closed." The gavel banged. It was a sharp wooden sound that signaled the end of my life as a victim and the beginning of my life as a stranger to them. We moved to the hallway outside. The air felt cooler here. Mallory began packing her briefcase, a satisfied smile on her face. "We did it," she said. "The credit bureaus will be updated within 30 days. You are free. Paisley." "Thank you," I said, "for believing me when I didn't even have a bank balance to pay you." "We will take your fees out of the damages," Mallory winked. "Gavin is paying for my time. Eventually." As we turned to leave, the doors to the courtroom swung open. Gavin and Lydia emerged, flanked by their defeated lawyer. Brielle trailed behind them, looking at the floor. Gavin looked at me with hate in his eyes. But he didn't say a word. He couldn't. The court order was a muzzle, and he knew that one wrong word would send him straight to a holding cell. He walked past me, his gait shuffling and old, heading toward the elevator. But Lydia stopped. She ignored her lawyer's frantic hand gesture. She ignored the court bailiff who took a step toward her. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, tears that finally looked real. Not because she was sorry for what she did, but because she was terrified of the future. "Paisley," she choked out. 5 years. You are really going to let this stand? I am your mother. I carried you." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had taught me to be small, to be grateful for scraps, to apologize for existing. I looked for the anger I had felt for weeks, but I couldn't find it. It had been replaced by a vast, cool distance. "You carried me," I said softly, "and then you dropped me. You left me at an airport with a bus pass and stole my name." "I was going to pay it back," she sobbed, stepping closer. "I just wanted us to be happy. Please, Paisley, don't do this. Don't leave us alone. Gavin is ruined. We have nowhere to go. We need you." There it was, the truth. We need you. Not, we love you. They needed me to fix it. They needed my credit score, my steady income, my competence to clean up the mess they had made. They wanted to move back into the house I now legally controlled. They wanted the host to let the parasites back in. "You told me something at the check-in counter," I said, my voice steady. "Do you remember? You handed me the ticket, and you said I could handle it. You said, 'Grow up.'" Lydia flinched, as if I had slapped her. "Well, Mom," I said, "I grew up, I handled it, and part of being an adult is choosing who gets to be in your life. I am respecting the decision you made to leave me behind. Now, you need to respect my decision to stay left behind." "Paisley," she wailed, reaching out a hand. I took a step back. "Goodbye, Lydia." I turned away. I didn't look back. I heard her sobbing, heard Brielle trying to hush her, heard the lawyer urging them to move, but the sounds faded as I walked down the long marble corridor toward the exit. Brielle was the last thing I saw before I pushed through the heavy revolving doors. She was standing by the elevator, watching me leave. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with a dawning realization. She realized that she was now the only child left to carry the weight of their dysfunction. She was the new Paisley, and judging by the fear in her eyes, she knew exactly how heavy that burden was going to be. I stepped out onto the courthouse steps. The city of Denver was alive. Cars honked. People rushed to lunch. The sun beat down on the concrete. It was a Tuesday, a normal, beautiful Tuesday. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that didn't smell of fear or deception. I felt light. I felt like I had taken off a heavy coat I had been wearing for 24 years. I walked down the steps to the sidewalk. My car was parked a few blocks away, but I didn't go to it. Instead, I reached into the pocket of my blazer. My fingers closed around a small, crinkled piece of plastic. The bus pass. It was worn at the edges. The magnetic strip was scratched. It was the object that had started the war. It was the insult they had thrown in my face, a symbol of how little they thought I was worth. Here, take the bus while we fly first class. I looked at it in the sunlight. For a moment, I thought about throwing it in the gutter. It belonged to the past. But then, I saw a bus approaching. It was the Route 15, the same line I had taken home from the airport on that first humiliating day. The same line I had taken to the grocery store when I had no money. The same line I had taken to the lawyer's office to build my defense. I smiled. I didn't throw the ticket away. I stepped up to the curb and waved the bus down. The doors hissed open. The driver, a tired-looking man with a gray beard, looked down at me. "Ride?" he asked. "Yes," I said. I climbed the steps. I tapped the card against the reader. Beep, valid. I walked to the back of the bus and sat by the window. The engine roared, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the seat. The bus pulled away from the curb, merging into the traffic. I watched the city slide by. I saw the courthouse disappear behind a row of office buildings. I saw the expensive hotel where Gavin and Lydia were probably trying to check in with a declined credit card. I saw the streets where I had walked in the rain. Terrified and broke, but I wasn't terrified now. I realized then that they had made a fatal mistake. They thought the bus pass was a cage. They thought that by taking my car keys and my money, they could keep me stationary, keep me waiting for them to return and resume their control. They were wrong. A bus doesn't just go in circles. It goes forward. It connects to trains, to airports, to other cities. It is a vehicle of motion. I leaned my head against the cool glass. I wasn't going home to the empty house. I was going to the leasing office to hand in my notice. I was going to break the lease legally. Of course, thanks to the domestic violence clause in Colorado law regarding financial abuse. I was going to move. I was going to find a new apartment, one that Gavin and Lydia had never stepped foot in, one that didn't smell of their perfume and their lies. I was going to start over, and this time, every dollar in my account, every decision I made, every ticket I bought would be mine. The bus picked up speed, heading toward the horizon. I looked at the crumpled ticket in my hand one last time. They thought they were leaving me a ticket to ride around in their shadow, waiting for them to come back and pick up the leash. But when they returned, they found the leash cut and the dog gone. They thought this ticket was a punishment, but as I watched the skyline of my old life recede into the distance, I knew the truth. They thought they left me a ticket to go in circles. But when they returned, they finally realized I had used it to go straight out of their lives, and everything had changed forever. Thank you so much for listening to Paisley's story of betrayal and justice. I know this one hit hard for a lot of you who have dealt with toxic family dynamics. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a bus in London, a car in Texas, or maybe your living room in Sydney? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading your stories, and if you enjoyed seeing Paisley take her power back, please make sure to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Hit that like button, and smash the hype button so we can get this story out to more people who need to hear that it is okay to walk away. Until next time, stay safe and stay strong.